here's a Goldmund Quartet. Welcome to our first episode of our new Coffee Talk series on IDAGIO Live. We're sitting here in Munich in one of our favorite cafes, the Time Tagesbar. And it's actually run by an old friend of ours, so we're super happy to be here. This series will be all about our new album, Travel Diaries. Each episode will highlight a work on this album, and we invited the composer behind the work to join us live for a coffee talk and talk a little bit about their music, their story, their life, and how the current situation is like for them.
Yeah, during the time of shutdown, we had our CD release, and we are very glad to show you our new album with music of 5 very different contemporary composers. And this album is a journey through our last 10 years of our quartet playing. And we started with quartet playing in 2010 when we were still in high school here in Munich. And since then, we had the chance to travel around the world and had some wonderful encounters with composers and the chance to discover their music. Yeah, and this album is like a little diary which shows the places we've been to and the story behind. Yeah, by the way, you can listen to our recordings here on IDAGIO by clicking on the link on the video description below.
Yes, and today's focus is on a very special piece on our new album, The Smile of the Flamboyant Wings, written by Dobrinka Tabakova, is the first piece ever written for us as a string quartet. Yes, and during this tour, which this season, which is theoretically still running, we had the great chance to commission a piece. This was made possible because of the Echo Rising Stars tour. And before Dobrinka will join us for a talk via Zoom, let's have a small impression of her piece.
The Smile of the Flamboyant Wings von Dobrinka Tabakova ist ein sehr inniges Stück, zu dem wir auch einen starken persönlichen Bezug haben. Es war das erste Werk, was wir als Quartett in Auftrag gegeben haben, wo wir wirklich durch die gemeinsame Probe mit der Komponistin und den Austausch darin Teil dieses Kompositionsprozesses sein konnten. Wir waren quasi live bei der Geburt dabei. Für uns als Musiker natürlich eine wahnsinnig spannende Erfahrung. Ein besonderes Highlight war dann natürlich die Uraufführung dieses Werkes letztes Jahr in Budapest, und seitdem hatten wir auch das große Vergnügen, dieses Werk schon einige Male mit auf Konzertreise nehmen zu dürfen. Hi, Dobrinka.
Hello, it's so nice to see you. The last time was in Budapest, no? We were having goulash under the stars.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And a long time ago.
A long time ago, yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us today. Where are you and how are you doing?
Hi, yes. I almost got that, and I'm guessing you asked how I'm doing, and I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the last time we saw each other in Budapest, I remember it all ended up in a nice bar where they had like all kind of these cool beers and different kind of flavors, and it was really a wonderful time. And what has happened for you since then? Like, where have you been? What have you done?
Oh, well, the last place that I traveled to was in St. Paul in Minnesota in America. So I just managed to slide under the door of the lockdown and was there at the end of February for a very nice concert with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And then since then, just writing at home.
I remember you told us that you like when you have a phase where you compose a lot, that you like to like lock down at home and just compose. So is that kind of like a perfect like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this composer life is like that. You just kind of, or at least for me, you have to shut off the world and just concentrate on the music, the notes. But of course, now is very different because there are all sorts of sort of things at the back of your mind, wondering what will be in the future, how will our profession function in this new landscape, how to make concerts possible. So I think this is, for the wider general music community, the really big question for the years ahead.
Mm. Yeah. How's the situation like in London for you at the moment? Are you guys still like in the shutdown, like can you go out, or are you kind of like stuck in your apartment?
We're staying alert. That's the official thing, that we're no longer staying home, we're now alert.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I'm going to compose a piece about the situation now here in.
I think everyone's had like so much of Corona, so I'll try and avoid it as much as I can.
I think it's like because they showed like statistic that Corona is like the word that has been like mentioned the most of like news wise, the most of anything. Like it's just crazy. Everything is all about Corona. So I think it's like it feels so good if you just try to avoid the word. You know, it already kind of gives you a relief.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did write a very short piece, which was inspired by this medieval prayer for pestilence, for illness. So that was my tiny little contribution to the current situation. But I think it's good to look ahead, look forward, and try and kind of have a path away from this as well.
Yeah. So then let's also leave Corona behind and let's talk about your piece. What can you tell us about it? Like, what was your idea? And very important, what story is behind the title?
Well, so just a little backstory to how we came to know each other. I got this wonderful email from Raphael inviting me to write for you and for your tour with the Echo series throughout Europe, this really great initiative. And so this was the piece that you asked me very kindly to write this work for you. And the first thing that I did was obviously to hear you. And the first music that I heard you perform was Shostakovich from one of your albums. And in particular, this was just the first track. It was the third quartet, the Allegro non troppo. And so I have this, I love writing for musicians that I've seen and heard live. I just need to imagine who I'm writing for. So this was kind of my get into your world. And then I listened to your Haydn quartets, which are just so elegant and so meticulous, so crystal. And so this is where I had this idea of what I wanted to write for you. Like you're quite capable of such vast contrasts in your sound and in the way that you interact. And so that's where the mood of the piece was born, through this kind of research, hearing you perform. And since I was a teenager, I've wanted to write something that's connected to Juan Miró, the painter. And this somehow felt like the right opportunity. There's this painting called The Smile of the Flamboyant Wings, which I didn't know as a teenager, but, and I said this in one of the talks, I think most of us have had and still have this paint app in the PC, this make little lines. And so when I was a teenager, I used to play around with it and came up with something like I even have it on my phone to make this truly interactive. So this is the painting by Juan Miró.
Yes.
Called The Smile of the Flamboyant Wings. It's kind of really wacky and wonderful. And without knowing, this is the kind of painting on the PC that I made.
That's the one you drew.
Yes, yeah, just, I mean, I didn't draw the computer. I
the lines.
on the computer to do the lines, and then with these filled in kind of Mondrian-esque colors. And then when I discovered the painting, I thought, oh my God, like it's meant to be. We have to, I have to write a piece about it. And this is how the title of the piece came about. And this was the starting point.
That's really amazing. What I really loved, because for us it was like the first experience of being part of this composing process. So I remember like the first time we actually had the chance to see or to meet each other was actually via Skype. We had like a little session and you sent us some sketches. And I loved how we just, tried it out. Like we had the sketches, but then we're like, okay, how does it sound like when two violins play these kind of atmospheric colors and then the cello plays a melody on top, and how we were kind of like improvising and like just trying to figure out also what fits for us as a quartet. I remember we played also a piece for you. I think we were working on Faisal Zai. We played that for you. It's also on the album. But I really loved this experience of having the chance to really communicate with you as a composer. And I was wondering, is that something that you do like more often? Because I can imagine like if you write something for orchestra or something, it's hard to have this kind of dialogue. Or is that something that you like to do, like when it's written for a certain artist?
Sorry, just the last bit. Can you repeat again, because there was some delay in the internet.
Sure. Yeah. I was just wondering this dialogue with the artist. It's hard to do if you write for orchestra. Yeah. So I was wondering, is that something that you search for, or that's something you like to do when you work with an artist, and how is it compared to writing for an orchestra?
Absolutely. Well, the intimacy of writing chamber music is unmatched by orchestral music. But for me, obviously, residencies with orchestras are important for that reason, because if you just have one commission, it's very difficult to have a one-to-one relationship with everybody in the orchestra. So that's why a residency, like at the moment I have the residency with the BBC Concert Orchestra, it allows me over the span of 3, 4, 5 years to get to know the musicians. But when it's a one-off, it's much more difficult. But this is where chamber music, I think, is so important, because it's much easier with 4 people to try and just get a little bit more of an idea of each one of your characters and write something that's specific for you. And for string quartets in particular, I haven't written that many string quartets. And I've always felt that I'd like to be democratic about it and give the second violin and the viola just as much exposure as the violin, the first violin and the cello. So that's why I start off with this little dialogue between Pinkas and Christoph, just to start the piece off and then kind of blossom out into the whole form. So I was quite conscious of wanting to do that kind of opening out, blossoming.
Yeah, that's very nice of you. I think they appreciated it a lot.
So when will you then write your next string quartet?
I'm actually right now, because I was writing for the ARD competition.
Yeah.
Yes, so but that will be now done in later years.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I think it like in 2022.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. But in a way, the piece is a continuation of what we've been doing. So this is the chapter 2 of the quartet began, which is written for you.
Ah, okay, cool. Very interesting.
Yeah, for us it was also very interesting this process, because we have now a different view on also pieces by Haydn or any other composer, because to hear what is important for you, what was important to have a big and really the sound in totally the whole idea behind it. So sometimes we are really fighting about hear your opinion means also that sometimes these little tiny things can be changed or are not always the most important thing in the music. And so I think this was really helpful for us, also for every work. So what I would like to know is, especially the rhythmical thing in this piece, it's going through the whole piece. How did it came? I mean, I always admire composers. I can't imagine sitting here and then it's coming to my mind. So I would like to ask you how this idea came for this rhythmically idea.
Interestingly, because if you listen to the piece, it begins with this kind of very irregular pulse in the second violin and the viola, and then it prepares the mood for the melody, which then comes into the first violin, and then the cello joins. So actually what came about first was the melody, and it was the melody dictated the rhythm in a way. And I love melodies. I think one of the reasons why I'm a composer and the music that I'm drawn to is always melodically, linearly led. So the rhythm came as the support of that melody. And another important part for the structure of this quartet is that I wanted to have this kind of horizontal opening, this da 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 da, and then the melody, and then the central section is kind of going from horizontal to vertical. So I have this kind of two aspects of the four voices, which could be either going like this, or they could be going as a kind of as a chord. I
remember when we first read the middle section with the quasi chorale like things, we find out it's very clear from the phrases. So 4 + 4, like like always in the music. So this is very classical in a way, and also from phrasing wise to go to the 4th bar and then to end in the 8th bar and something like this.
For me, what was really wonderful was to have your input with the bowing, especially at the beginning, because there's this kind of folk fiddle sound which is always on the string, and that's when I write for strings, it's the one aspect that I'm very sensitive of. It's like not it has to still have a phrase and to be continuous, but then have this kind of freedom of on the string, not kind of really overtly phrased in a classical sense. So that was, I think, really important, that in the rehearsal in Munich, we managed to get that language and get that mutual understanding.
Yes, and also like talking about the rehearsal in Munich, what I really like is that you gave us the freedom of how we want to play things. Like I remember before our first rehearsal, we were thinking, okay, because there weren't too many dynamic markings yet. And so we were thinking, okay, what should we do? Should we all keep it in the piano, or should we give it like a little, at some passages, some crescendo or whatever? And I really loved it. And that's something like what Florian was also saying, that was so nice for us to see, is that like if you that music does have a room for interpretation, like where some passages where we went in, like gave a little bit more volume, and you were actually saying like, oh, this is great, keep it like this, and you know, you were actually encouraging us also to maybe do some things that come naturally.
Yeah, and since you've mentioned it before, like that you appreciated some of the input that we gave you, maybe you can tell us, like in general, like how is it for you as the composer to work after you compose the piece, to like actually then start working with the musicians? Is it sometimes that you come to the first rehearsal and you're like, oh my god, this doesn't sound like anything like I imagined, or sometimes it's like, oh, this is so different, but I really like it, and you change the words. Like, how is it for you usually interaction with musicians?
For me, the rehearsal is probably the key moment. It's I feel like I have the idea of what I want to do is there, the whole thing from beginning to end. I have the structure, I have the material, and then I really enjoy the collaborative element of the rehearsal. It's the moment when I have the most amount of pleasure just to share this experience and to hear the different ideas of interpreting also, because you have great ideas and maybe another quartet will play it with a different understanding. And I like to leave some of that interpretation with the freedom of not overly subscribing the scores with too many sort of minute details.
Is this something that, because I was reading that you studied with Yanis Xenakis, and I know that like often he also has like these like some patterns that can be mixed like with other things, and I was wondering like how did he influence you on your composing style?
Oh, well, I was at a summer school in France where he was one of the lecturers. So I managed to, I sat in on all the lectures and managed to also have a little bit of one-to-one time with him. So I have a great respect for his structural thinking above everything else. And in particular, the percussion pieces like Pléiade, Sappho, they're I think just iconic works for the percussion family. So I think the styles are obviously very different, but this sense of structure is, I think, the thing that I have taken most from Xenakis, this almost audible sense of the consequence and the sequence of the material in the piece. It's almost like seeing architecture in sound. So this for me has been one of the foundations of the way that I think about composition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dorinka, thank you very much. We're almost at the end of our first coffee talk today. So we would like to thank you very much for joining us for. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What was you not drinking? You're not drinking coffee, right? What are you drinking?
Tea. I have tea in a Garmisch-Partenkirchen mug from the Strauss house. So I thought I'd be as I could be. Yes.
Actually, we should drink a beer together.
I would like that very much, and some cake, please.
Oh yes, and cake. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we hope we'll see you soon again.
I hope so. Look forward to the album continuing to travel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for joining.
Thank you.